Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and may God bless each and every one of you. And I thank each and every one of you for coming and lending me your ear, your eyes, and your time. This is a very beautiful day. And look at this. I'm getting a message from Lancaster right now. Hold on one second. Lascaris, excuse me. Hold on one second. I'm getting a message from him right now. There's a few things that I want to tell you about. Yes. Listen, this is what Dimitri said to me. Oh, that's cool. He said that he did not know that he was already booked for today. He said that thanks for my understanding, because I had hit him back not too long ago, and we're going to do the show with him Sunday at noon time, which will be 11 o'clock Central Time. There are a few things, he's an international lawyer, he's an activist and all that, and he has some things that he has that are pressing, and I understand that, so I didn't make any bones about it. He just hit me up and confirmed the time and the day for the rescheduling of the show. But also, I want to say this to everybody that's listening. We have a huge, magnificent lineup of guests that will be coming on the show in the weeks ahead. I mean, some magnificent people. I mean, activists, international personalities. It's been confirmed. A lot of them has hit me back today and yesterday and day before yesterday, and we're just working out the days, the times. We're going to have a live, I believe, Monday morning with someone. I'm not going to tell you the name. You'll see it on the page, on the channel page, maybe later today or tomorrow. We're going to have multiple guests on the show coming up. I'm trying to give you guys some of the best, most respected, and most enlightened guests that any show is giving you. Okay. Again, now let me go to the chat real quick because I see a few things in the chat. Joel Bradford, let me put this on. Let me put this up here. Joel Bradford put this in the chat. We good with you alone. We want to hear some rant. Thank you, Joel. Hey, do you have a wrench, Joel? Because I see you in here a lot now. Do you have a wrench? Let me know. And if not, I'm gonna wrench you up. Now, listen, everybody. We're gonna still do the show now. Yeah, one elephant doesn't stop the circus, right? So we're going to keep going, and we're going to keep talking to you and revealing some new truths and analyzing the news or whatever. But I want to inform you that we have an excellent lineup coming up in the week ahead or the weeks ahead. I mean, really good lineup, and I'm proud. And as I often say, this small show is the larger shows. We are the larger shows' favorite shows. I was listening before we get into the show. I got to rant a little bit just about something. So late last night, early this morning, I'm listening to a Scott Ritter interview, right? And Scott is my guy, and he's being interviewed, and the host, almost at the end of the show, maybe like 20 minutes before the show ended with something that I normally would say from time to time on this show, which made me know that they had to listen to my show. Okay. I won't say what it is, and I won't put the person on the spot, but thank you for listening to my show, even though you didn't mention my name. Okay. But now let's go into this news stuff, man. We got to get this news going. So I want to go to an article that caught my eye earlier that I was going to ask Dimitri about. And we were going to talk about a few things. I mean, we were going to talk about a lot of things, but check this out. There's an article out on RT.com, and the article is titled, "Russia Has Left Sick Part of Global Economy," according to a minister. And the article goes like this. Let me see if I can get it. "The pivot to Asia has made recovery more sustainable," Maxim Orinch, I'm butchering his name, Orishin says. "Western sanctions have forced Russia to restructure its economy and reorient towards rapidly developing markets in Asia." Now, I'm going to stop right there for a minute, okay? Because I want to show you something. And it'll prove what I have been telling you guys before. Okay? Um, According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the word force means strength or energy exerted or brought to bear, cause of motion or change, active power, the forces of nature, motivating force in her life, capitalized. Now, why did I use that? Because the Russian minister stated, Western sanctions have forced Russia to restructure its economy and reorient towards rapidly developing markets in Asia. And what's very important about this, and Joel, I see you in there. I'm about to rinse you up in just a second. So you just stay in the chat. That's the only way I can rinse you up, by seeing you in the chat. Hold on one second. What is YouTube doing? What is YouTube? Hold on one second, everybody. YouTube has wiped out my chat. Are you serious? Maybe let me try to do it right here. I see his. Hold on one second, everybody. I tell you what, these games that they play. But you should have your wrench now. But listen, there's something very, very significant about what was said. You know, I often tell you that there is a divide in the Russian government where people on this side of the divide wants to stay with the West, and people on this side wants to reorient with the East. All right, but it took the stealing of Russia's wealth to force Russia. They didn't want to do it. The leadership didn't want to do it. They even right now they still say our Western colleagues, our Western partners. Partnership involves you and I both giving a little bit to sustain both of us. But that's not what the West wants to do. See, when Iran had been screaming about sanctions for 40 years, Russia helped Iran, but at the same time, Russia kind of said, well, we'll go with the sanctions and we'll go with this and we'll go with that. When other nations were sanctioned, Russia was not as I would say, ready to jump and break those sanctions. But now that the sanctions have been aimed at Russia, it has forced them to see it from a different view. So this is why the Russian minister says this. He says, Western sanctions have forced Russia. Again, the word force means strength or energy exerted or brought to bear. So that means the Western intransigence, Western imperialism, and exceptionalism caused a reappraisal, a rethink of Russia trying to be integrated and accepted into the Western sphere. They don't even like Russia. I heard some of them, some colleagues call, well, not my colleagues, but some of those people they call colleagues, call them snow niggers. Seriously, I heard them say that. They, as a matter of fact, there was I forget who it was, but they were talking about how the West behind closed doors was saying that Russians aren't even Caucasians. Listen to me good. I was listening to this last night, so and it'll come to me. And they were saying they are from the mongrel line of blood lineage. This is what these people who are making U.S. and U.K. and NATO policy think of the Russians. But there are some Russians who believe reorient themselves and be accepted by the West when the West look at them as orcs. Right? So with the reality of the situation, with America unleashing, because listen, the time is limited for the empire. We're living in the decline and fall of American power, American dominance, and American rule. And now she's lashing out. And she sees China as her greatest impending threat because China is a non-white, non-Western nation. But she sees Russia as a great threat because Russia is the largest nuclear power on the planet. And Russia can bring to bear a significant military power if conflict were to break out between East and West, you know? So this minister, in talking in this article, laid bare some things that I had been telling you guys before, that some of them did not want to reorient, no matter how good China was, no matter how well the ASEAN, ASEAN organization was reorienting everything towards the east, and they were trying to build things towards the east, no matter how good that was. And China showed a tremendous growth year after year with double-digit growth. That was not enough to force Russia to move itself out of the Western leaning way and push it towards the Eastern leaning way until America and NATO showed their hands and they crossed Russia's red line with Ukraine, and then they stole Russia's assets. So they were forced to, so that significant imperial power was brought to bear on Russian thinking, Russian economics, Russian military planning, and Russian culture, which caused a strategic shift from west to east. Okay, now let's read a little bit more. It says, according to the official, the shift towards the health, listen to what they call the East now, the healthy part of the global economy has allowed Russia's recovery to become more sustainable. Well, that was always the case, though. It just took America to put Russia in a corner. It took the Western world to put Russia in a corner to realize that, you know, Russia, I would say, was suffering from spousal abuse, if I may use that term. You know, when a woman has been in a relationship with a man so long, and the man has abused her and demoralized her, and it could be vice versa. It doesn't have to be the man doing it to the woman. It could be the woman doing it to the man, you know, over and over and over and over. And their self-worth, they present themselves to the public as being confident, but behind closed doors, they are vulnerable to the accusations and the slander of the person that they love. And sometimes it takes that moment of awakening to force them, when they are put in a corner and their life is on the line and they have to choose. And then this awakens something in them, and they see that, hey, this person is nothing but a hindrance to my progression. That's what's happening right now. And Russia is waking up to the spousal abuse that it has suffered from the West. It was a little slow to wake up. Gaddafi had tried to awaken the African continent up. Mugabe had tried to awaken the continent up. You had Patrice Lumumba. You had Kwame Nkrumah. All of these people tried to wake up the African continent. You had Hugo Chavez. You had Fidel Castro. You had all of these leaders in the Latin American sphere tried to awaken Latin America to the spousal abuse that they were receiving from the empire in the Western world. Now, you see, China has awakened to the reality of the spousal abuse that it was receiving from the empire. So it took something, a come to Muhammad moment, a come to Jesus moment, for them to realize that the West had no, I would say, no love for them. They only used and abused them for self-aggrandizement, for selfish gain. You understand what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying. So again, and Holly's, let me put Holly's up there. Okay. What? Man, I'm telling you, YouTube, you tripping. YouTube, you are tripping. And Lex Bourbon says Russia must end American hegemony. Slava Russia and China down with the global cabal. I'll put that up in just a second, but I gotta put, if they will allow me. They're tripping right now. YouTube is really tripping, and StreamYard is too. But they're trying to keep me from putting comments up. But again, it took that moment where when a person is pushed into a corner in this fight or flight, that fight or flight moment. Now Russia is choosing to fight for so long when it was weakened economically and militarily and politically, and it was saturated with corruption. That is no longer the case. And so now this is that moment where Russia makes its stands and digs its heel in and say, listen, if you continue to cross these lines, I will smack you in your mouth. Russia, China Iran, and now you see the African nations. When did you ever think about this? This shows you that the West is in a total decline. And let's be honest about this. Real Truth Talk, shout out to Real Truth Talk in the building. And I gotta, hold on one second. Let me see Real Truth Talk real quick. And I'm not gonna miss my place. Hold on one second. YouTube is tripping. Real Truth Talk is showing up in my StreamYard, but not showing up in my YouTube. Let's see again. Let's try it. Okay, there we are. But I tell you what. Anyway, when did you ever think that you would see or live to see the day where African nations, the ones that make you think that are weak and feeble and are begging and subsisting off of Western grants and loans, when did you ever think that you would live to see the day where these so-called weak and feeble nations stand up and say, listen, no more, get out. We don't want the leader that you imposed upon us. We don't want your economic so-called aid. We don't want the strings that are attached with them. We would rather eat grass than to deal with this stuff anymore. When did you ever think you would see that? When did you ever think that those African leaders would stand up and say, you know what? How is it that you're rich, but we have the resources? How is it that you're living in heaven and we're in hell? How is it that you continue to deploy troops to fight terrorism here, but the terrorism continues to morph and grow? How is it that you're fighting drugs? Look at Colombia. America has been in Colombia for 40 years talking about fighting cocaine, and cocaine is out of control. They have been in Afghanistan. When the Taliban ruled Afghanistan, prior to the U.S. invading Afghanistan, there was little to no opium or poppy plants being grown. As soon as NATO went in, they stopped the people from growing the plants that help the farmers, and they made them grow poppy plants. And Afghanistan became the largest exporter of opium products. That's no coincidence. So before America and Great Britain and the rest of Europe went into Africa, talking about fighting terrorism, there was no Boko Haram, no ISIS, none of these made-up organizations that are run by these alphabet intelligence agencies of the West. But they use them so that they can justify their deployment to these nations, so that they can try to balkanize and keep control of these areas, which are strategically important to imperial rule. You understand? Imperial rule must be kept at all costs. Look at, most of you don't even know that because of America's intervention right now in Somalia is being balkanized. America has drone bases there, and while we speak, Somalia is being balkanized. Do you know that? They got Somaliland and Somalia. I'm telling you this. Now you see African nations like Mali, Burkina Faso, in Niger, are in a military alliance now, saying, listen, we may not be the most powerful military alliance. We may not have the wherewithal to beat back NATO, but we'd rather die together on our feet than live on our knees. That is astounding. That shows you that people are fed up. When a person says, you know what, you've done the worst to me, I no longer fear death. I don't fear your threats. I don't fear your bribes and your threats and you deploying military assets around me. I don't fear that anymore. I've been under that thumb for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Enough is enough. I'm going to make my stand. And what's the worst that could happen? A soldier dies but once, but a coward dies 1,000 deaths. You understand? So these leaders they are fed up with the resources being siphoned out. And look at what Russia was doing to the European Union. I want you to understand something. And this shows they have no gratitude. Russia was selling them oil and gas below market price. Below market price. They sanctioned Russia. stole his reserves. Is that a friend? Is that a partner? Is that a colleague? Listen, I want you to understand the seriousness of what I'm saying, because sometimes I have to say this and bring it home to you, because most people don't understand the seriousness of this. Russia had been a reliable supplier of oil and gas to Europe, even under the Soviet Union. Do you understand? They never reneged on a contract, even through provocations by the West. It was the West that reneged on all of the contracts that were signed. And now look at the economic environment that they have put themselves in, and they're screaming. As I was talking about on the previous show with Martin Saif, and I brought it up. Why is it that Western nations, specifically now I'm talking about Europe, because the European Union is just the political wing of NATO, and NATO is the military wing of the European Union. Okay, we gotta deal with some hard facts. Okay, we got to deal with some hard facts. Let's do a deep dive into this real quick. Okay, so look at this, and in the chat, please continue to engage. I'm looking at the chat while I'm talking to you all. Okay, please continue to engage and also put issues up there, and I'll try my best to address it or bring you in. But check this out with the European Union. Muammar Gaddafi kept warning Europe and the United States, if you remove me, you'll deal with an influx of migrants, the likes of which you've never seen before, and it'll swamp you. He was telling them that. He said, I'm the one that stands in between you having secured borders and an influx of migrants. Because if you remove me in my government, there would be nothing to stand in the way of that. And guess what the European Union did? Under the US, UK, and the French auspices, they used the UN resolution and went around the UN resolution to Libya back to the Stone Age, to destroy all of the infrastructure, to destroy all of the government bodies that keeps government viable, which could govern the entirety of the nation, because Libya is a huge nation, right? So they destroyed all that. Then they go into Chad, they go into Mali, they go into all of these nations. They don't tell the European citizens that. They send them in there. Then before you know it, terrorism springs up in these areas, and then they go publicly and say, hey, we're going to send troops into this area to help this nation fight terrorism. Beforehand, they are the ones who created the terrorism by sending troops covertly there. And then they go and tell the public, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to deploy just a small contingent of troops there to help that government fight terrorism, right? And then they go in there and institute color revolutions, overthrow a government, assassination. They not just assassinating government officials, they go in there and kill huge portions of the population and blame it on groups that you've never heard before. Boko Haram. Notice every time America wants to deploy somewhere, another so-called Islamic terrorist group comes out of nowhere. Wherever the UK wants to deploy somewhere, another so-called Islamic terrorist group deploy. Why hasn't the UK been held responsible for Wahhabism? Because Wahhabism came from the UK. It was under the UK that they brought in those Saudis. Those the Saudi grouping of people, they were bandits in the desert. It was the UK that got them out and struck a deal with them and made them the leaders of Arabia. There's no book that is called Lawrence of Saudi Arabia, right? The book is called Lawrence of Arabia, right? Movie's called Lawrence of Arabia. Then how in the world did you get the Saudi in front of it? Huh? Do you ever think about that? It was the UK that did that. They taught them that mannerism. They put that extremism into that, and then they put these people in power. because they wanted to control the strategic area, and we're watching the blowback effect of those policies. Okay? And so, again, with the European Union, they removed Gaddafi. They destroyed the Libyan government and went after his children and grandchildren and his wife. And now the European Union is screaming about the influx of migrants. And listen, and this is going to seem harsh, but sometimes we need a harsh dose of reality to awaken to what is going on, okay? In some of the areas, they talk about these are no-go zones because it's so full of violence and you know, unlawful things going on. And I say to you, what is more violent and more unlawful than to use lies and deception to go into another nation, to bomb them, to destabilize them, to destroy their way of life, their means of making a living, and their government? What's more violent and what's more unlawful than that? Huh? I'm asking. Holly Horn says, Lawrence knew. He said, leave the Arabs alone. Yeah, Diane Feinstein is dead. Yeah. Listen, she got a lot of blood on her hand too. And maybe I'll talk to you about. Check this out. This is off subject. My daughter bought me this, right? I've had this for about 2 years. I'm not at home, by the way, okay? Because ironically, check this out. This is always happening. So, you know, you don't want to think of no conspiracy, but check it. So an hour or so before the show started, the power went out in the neighborhood. So guess what happens? 5 minutes later, the power comes back on in the neighborhood. Every house but mine. I live in the county, so we're not congested like that, okay? So somebody's over that way and I'm over this way, but all the power came back on. So I do have a solar generator, but the time wasn't for me to do that, to set that up, because one of the cords is missing. My son, we set it up and my son misplaced one of the cords, so I have to go to Home Depot. Didn't realize it till the day again, okay? Now, I come over here to do the show. Go back home because I left these here at the house. The power's back on right before the show starts. I said, man, you got to be kidding me. You have to be kidding me. But listen, as they say, PB World says, as they say, Feinstein will be wheeled in for the for the next vote. Let me put this up here. Oh man, that's crazy. That's a good one too. PB World, that's a good one. Oh my God. Oh man. Excuse me. But listen, PB World, that was a real good one. They destroy the institutions of government. And then they scream about the influx of migrants. That is, as I gave the example the other day, that is tantamount to the European Union going in, taking cups or plates, throwing them on the floor, breaking them, and then walking across the plates, the broken plates, and getting glass or shards of glass in their feet and complaining that they got cut. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's almost in everything you see hypocrisy. The United States talk about China's unfair trade practices, and yet there's no one using more unfair trade practices than the U.S. and the U.K. Think about it. What's more unfair than dollar hegemony, where you get to run up deficits, don't produce anything, and get to live in luxury off the back of the world? You export inflation. You control your interest rates, which causes the rise or the drop in prices of food around the world, which could destabilize nations, governments, and people. What's more unfair than that? Huh? Right, real truth talk. Hypocrisy at its finest. At its finest. I'm telling you these things because nobody sits down and nobody really talks about these things because they're scared to offend somebody. Sometimes being offended is good because it awakens the senses. Sometimes you need to be offended. so it can awaken your senses, and you can put that gray matter to work. You're being lulled to sleep by the propaganda machines, whether they're on mainstream news and media or whether they're on the so-called alternative media, which most of them are compromised also. And let me tell you this, because this goes hand in hand with what I'm talking about. And you might not want to hear it, but it's real. Some of your favorite channels, they're compromised. They look at this thing here as a business. Yeah, they give you a lot of truth, but they look at this as a business, and they set it up as a corporation, as a business. And when you run a business, what is the top objective of a business? It's to get profit, right? And when that is your top priority, sometimes news and truth suffers. Have you ever thought about that? You think about it when you're addressing CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. Why don't you think about it with some of your favorite channels on here? Just look it up. You'll see what I'm saying. I'm not lying to you. I'm not making nothing up. Real truth talk. Believe me, I ain't scared to tell the truth. I know that's right. So again, you think about you break the glass, you leave it in the floor, expecting somebody else to sweep it up. You see it there. You've been warned not to break the glass, and then you walk on it. And then you get cut and you get shards of glass in your feet, and you're complaining to the world that it's broken glass on your floor and your feet are cut. That's what they're doing with the influx of migrants. Again, I ask you, and I'm not just saying this because I'm black, okay? For anybody that's saying this, don't try that color stuff with me. I tell the truth, okay? Think about this. Is Mali in Europe? What about Burkina Faso? What about Gabon? What about Niger? What about Somalia, excuse me. What about Yemen? They're not in Europe. They have no European bases, right? They have no American bases, right? Then why are their sovereignty, the sovereignty of those nations, being ignored? Why is it right and justified for America to fight so-called terrorism, or the UK or NATO to fight terrorism in those lands, but it's not justified for those lands to say, hey, we see a terrorist threat in the UK. We need to deploy troops there, and we need to deploy a base there. Or we see a terrorist threat. What is the most terrorist nation on the planet? America has been at war her entire existence. What is more terrorist than that? And why shouldn't those nations have the same right if we have a so-called UN charter that guarantees equal rights to every state on the planet? Why can't those states deploy troops to the United States or to Europe? How would Europe and the United States feel about Latin America deploying troops there? Africa deploying troops there? Asian nations deploying troops there, Central Asian nations deploying troops there, Western Asian nations deploying troops there, Eurasian nations deploying troops there. Why is it that you have the prerogative to deploy everywhere and wherever you say is terrorism at? That's not right. And you cannot, if God is a God of justice, this is what I'm trying to make most people think about. Because in all of this geopolitical and economic talk, God is left out of it, and that's the problem. That's the absolute problem. Real true talk. I'm Mexican. We're brothers, brother man. You better believe that. You better believe it. So why is it, right, that the West can do these things and it's no problem, but if anybody else even contemplates something like this, it's an affront to American sovereignty. Look at how people act when these conspiracy sites or these websites come up and say, well, China is deploying bases in the US. Well, Russia may be secretly deploying troops to Nicaragua. Not the US, but Nicaragua. There's an outrage. How dare they do that? And yet the United States uses a so-called embassy, not an embassy, but a half embassy in Taiwan to station Marines there, which is acknowledged to be Chinese territory. I'm asking, why? See, I'm telling you, there's an exceptionalism there. There's a hint of racism there. There's a lot of fascism there. And a whole bunch of exceptionalism. That's the do as I say, not as I do model. And if you do it to me, it's unacceptable. But I can do it to you because I see terrorists over there. The very terrorists that I arm, train, and give political cover to, when the need arises, I use those terrorists as a threat so that I can justify my deployment over there, so I can destabilize the government, control the government, put in the office whomsoever I wish to put in the office, so that I can turn them against anybody that I deem to be a threat to my sovereignty and my rule. Nobody says a word across the United States. Nobody says a word in Europe. But you scream about migrants in the very nations, listen to me good, that are being overrun with migrants. I want you to understand something. And I want you to Google what I'm saying, okay? Okay? Google what I'm saying. The very nations in Europe that are screaming about being overrun by migrants, they secretly have bases in Africa. The very one, even Canada in North America has secret bases in Africa. The United States has bases all over Africa. How on the one hand can you be occupying these nations over here, and that's okay, but you don't want to accept the people who are fleeing your occupation? You owe them something. You owe them something. But this gets left out of the discussion, and this is why I'm not popular with a lot of the mainstream so-called alternative media sites. Because I'm going to put it on your mind. I'm going to make you think, and I'm not just going to go along to get along. I'm going to tell you the truth, regardless to whom or what. You can like it or dislike it. You can listen or me off. All right? And what the Real Truth Talk says, I hate bullies, and believe me, so does God. They will be handled. That's a mic drop moment right there. That's a mic drop moment. I hate bullies, and believe me, so does God. They will be handled. Matter of fact, that's going up on the. Hey, look at this. Is what Real Truth. This is what I got to put this one up after this, though, okay? Because this is in line with what I'm saying. And a lot of people don't like this manner of talk because it makes them uncomfortable. And again, every time when you progress, every time when you grow, every time when you become successful, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to make yourself or become a little bit uncomfortable for progression, for growth, for success. So me making you uncomfortable, I'm just preparing you for growth. All right? So don't be mad at me. Be glad at me. Okay? So listen, Real Truth Talk says this, and this is hilarious. It's serious, but it's hilarious at the same time. He says, we didn't cross the border. The border crossed us, and it crossed you by half of the United States too, right? Because half of the United States used to be across the border, but they took and put it on their side of their border, right? I understand what you're saying. I understand exactly what you're saying. That gets left out of the discussion, though. That gets left out of the discussion. Now, listen, as I'm talking to you all, where is it at? I want to continue with this line of thinking. Let's see. Let me go back to something. It was something that I wanted to show you all as we're talking on this. Oh, and by the way, you see me only on one computer right now. I'm ordering 2 more computers. I didn't tell you guys this, but I think the show last week, my computers were hit by a massive campaign of something, and 2 of the computers were taken down. If you go back and look at one of the shows, you'll see me constantly doing like this and constantly typing. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. and what's going on. And so that's what took place. Two of my computers were taken down. So you see me on one computer, and I gotta pull up 100 tabs on one computer, and I don't like that. I like to have my computers where I can look around, okay, and have the stuff pulled up. So you have to bear with me, okay? We make do with what we have. And so where is this thing? All right, here we are. Let's go up a little bit because it's something very important that I wanted to share with you all. Here's one of them right here. So as we talked about Russia, right? As we talked about Russia and the position that Russia was in, and how they said that they were forced to do a reappraisal and turn towards the east. This is what was said on September 29th by Andrei Kostin, okay? I'm drinking some coffee my mom made. So it says, time to kill SWIFT, Russian banker suggests. Moscow and its trade partners should switch to transactions in national currencies. Well, this is something major because there's another article that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes that goes hand in hand with this, okay? So listen, it goes and says, and remember, I'm reading these with you for the first time. So if something pops up that I'm not aware of, we'll discuss it. It says, Russia should abandon the use of the Western-controlled global financial messaging system, SWIFT, the head of Russia's second largest bank has argued. Now stop right there. He said should. That implies that it has not, right? So if it has not completely switched, even after the sanctions and the theft, this right here lends more credence to what I was telling you about. There's still a block in Russia, still hoping and holding on to something that maybe one day soon that the West will accept them. You understand? Because the word should implies that it has not taken place and that it will take place in the near to late future, right? Excuse me, right? So he said should. So even after Russia has its mirror system, even though Russia has hooked up with India's system, hooked up with the African trade payment system, hooked up with the West Asian trade payment system, hooked up with Iran's national payment system, and above all, has hooked up with the Chinese union pay system, there's still people hoping that they will be accepted by the West if they just hold on long enough. So let's go further. Russia should abandon the use of the Western-controlled global financial messaging system, SWIFT, the head of Russia's second largest bank has argued. VTB CEO Andrei Kostin has been persistently calling for the increased use of domestic currencies by Russia and its trade partners, describing it as a sanctions-induced necessity. So again, now we have this. This means that he is telling you that the West continues to turn the screws, and that because of these sanctions, which are the screws being turned, it has induced the necessity, meaning they have been forced or compelled to look at other avenues by which to do trade and transactions, according to this article, right? Now, let's go a little further. All right. It says, we need to kill SWIFT in our transactions. The issue is quite simple, but it will require certain actions, including within individual countries, Kostin stated on Friday at the International Banking Forum in Sochi. He noted that most of Russia's payments are already made in national currencies, including in trade with China, Indonesia, India, as well as Arab and African states. I just told you guys that. De facto, such a shift towards financial settlements in national currencies with the global south is already being implemented to a large extent. According to the banker, the process is irreversible as more and more countries realize that they could be the next targets of the West's use of the dollar and euro as political tools. Now, stop right there for a minute. Haven't I told you guys over and over and over and over and over again that the reason that even though the European Union hates implementing some of the policies that the United States dictates to them, right? They are forced to because the euro is a U.S. invention. The European Union is a U.S. Contraption. Therefore, the U.S. dominates the politics. Do you know the United States has a seat in the European Parliament? The United States. I'm telling you this. Excuse me. The U.S. dictates the policies. Even though the U.S. sometimes cringes on certain policy movements that the United States dictates, they are compelled to do it. You'll say, well, why did the UK do this? Or why did Germany do this? Or why did such and such do this? It is because they're compelled to, because the euro is tied to the dollar. The British pound is tied to the dollar. If the dollar dies, if the dollar collapses, so too does the pound and the euro, which means the entire collapse of Western economic and financial power, which means the collapse of Western political power, which means a total implosion of Western military power. You understand me? Joel Bradford says, really? Yes, really. Go Google it. The U.S. has a seat in the European Council. Yeah, most people don't even know that. Now, I'm telling you this. But again, we are seeing a paradigm shift, the likes of which we've never seen in modern history. Now, Joel says, wow, yeah, Google it. I want to stay along this line because it's an article that came out today on Press TV. Okay? And it's in conjunction in the same line of thought of what I just read to you about what the Russian banker said, it's time to kill the SWIFT system, right? And in this article, the article is titled BRICS to create competitor to SWIFT international payment system. Now, what are the odds that on one hand, in the Russian blogosphere, they talk about the dire need to create an alternative payment system and to kill the SWIFT system. And then a new member of the BRICS, a new member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran, which has been under sanctions for over 40 years, comes out with an article the same day in the same vibe, the same spirit as the Russian article, which says BRICS to create competitor to SWIFT international payment system. What are the odds of that? Huh? And the article goes like this. Because I saw this and I wanted to read it, but I said I was going to wait till we go live. I was going to ask Dimitri about this, but we'll ask him about this Sunday. It says BRICS nations plan to create a money transferring network competing with the SWIFT's international payment system. Russian Finance Minister Anton Silonov says, I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name. I'm sorry. Charge it to my head and not to my heart. I'm not doing this on purpose. I am so sorry. It says, speaking to TASS news agency on Thursday, Silonov, I cannot pronounce that man's name, said the creation of an alternative to SWIFT will be discussed within the BRICS next year. Talking to reporters at the Moscow Financial Forum, he said a number of BRICS countries had already developed their own payment systems. We are trying to implement our financial information transmission system. Other BRICS countries are either creating their own systems or have their own systems. Therefore, for now, this issue is a topic of discussion, he said. The Russian official said the economic bloc was looking for ways to replace international payment systems with mechanisms that will help promote trade between member states. Now, he goes and says, this is on the agenda of next year's meeting at the level of financial authorities and administrations of the BRICS members countries. It will be one of the standing issues. Today, Russia is rebuilding all relations from the west to the southeast, and this trend will continue. Now stop right there. If this was supposed to be implemented next year, why would he openly and publicly state that right now, especially under economic duress from Western and U.S. sanctions. Huh? That means that it's already underway. It's already underway. So what they're doing, according to what he said, if I'm reading it right, is that the nations that already have their own payment systems will be doing transactions for nations that are in the global south and the BRICS nations. They will be doing it through their transaction system until those nations have built their own transaction systems, and then they will be all added to one system to complement each other, which will overtake the BRICS, the SWIFT system. So in real time, what he is saying and what that other article is leading to is that the financial war that Europe and the US started has boomeranged back. And now it is undercutting the financial power of England and America. Why did I say England and America? These two are one and the same. That's why I said it. We know that when the world went off the gold and silver standard in 1971, the financial doom of England and America was sealed. Why did I preface America with England? And why didn't I say the financial doom of America and England? Why did I say the financial doom of England and America? It's because the London Gold Exchange is the center of gold trade. Gold is real money. The New York Exchange is tied to the London Exchange. Therefore, when England hiccups, America burps too. When America coughs, England gets a cold, economically, politically, and militarily. So we look, thank you, Real Truth Talk. We look at these things, and now, without any sound back, and I want you to think of the significance of what I'm saying to you, all right? Because we have Iran, the third largest producer of gas, I believe it is. We have the United Arab Emirates, a huge producer of gas and oil. We have Iran, one of the largest producers of oil. We have Arabia, which fluctuates between being the largest producer of oil between Arabia and Russia. Russia is one of the largest producers of oil and gas. All right. We have South Africa, one of the largest producers of minerals, period, and of gold. We have China, the largest producer of gold. We have Russia, one of the largest producers of gold and all of these other minerals. We have China, the largest producer, which accounts for 90% of all rare earth minerals. All of these nations are now in the BRICS Plus. So why would Arabia force Iran to use the dollar to transact with China? Why would China force Arabia to use the dollar to transact with Russia? So we know that the base of dollar domination is the petrodollar, and the main country that is used as the hedge against the collapse of the dollar is Arabia. So America is losing its position because Arabia has now been accepted into the BRICS, the BRICS Plus. So in real time, we're watching the collapse in the fall of America, but we're watching the decline of the dollar. And with that comes a dramatic change in America's spending habits, America's way of living, and America's budget fiascos, especially pertaining to her military. This is underway. All right, I got you, Real Truth. Thank you anyhow. Thank you. I got you. So people don't talk about these things. They don't realize what's going on, right? They don't see that the reason that America is lashing out is because she sees that her time is limited as the global hegemon. The reason that the UK is lashing out with these acts of war and aggression against Russia, with these bombings of bridges, bombing of the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet, with all of this stuff, because these are, if you believe Ukraine was able to do that, I have 7 bridges in my mother's garage that I'm gonna sell you all for $6. And these bridges are as long as from California to New York. If you believe that Ukraine carried out those acts by themselves. In reality, these are provocations by the West. They want a little plausible deniability, but not much. They want Russia to know that they had a hand in it, but not openly. They want Russia to realize that, hey, we can escalate, but we feel that you won't escalate. And as long as we feel that you won't escalate with us, we'll escalate with you. Isn't that how a bully works? If the bully feels that he has a free hand, he bullies you. If the bully has a thought that you may confront them or you may not be scared of them, they pause and they do an appraisal of the situation and they try to figure you out and try to weigh you before they come at you. And if they do certain things that you don't react to, they feel that they can escalate more and more and more and more. And once they get away with so many things, they no longer fear escalation. That's America. That's the UK. That's NATO. And that's what they have been doing. But Russia is a patient nation. And I've been telling you this, excuse me, that there's something in the Bible that talks about Gog and Magog. And in the Holy Quran, it talks about Gog and Magog and how Gog and Magog would sally forth and reduce the earth to a veritable hell. Now, it's ironic that in the Holy Quran it says that God removed that curtain, that veil that held Gog and Magog apart. A veil is a what? A veil is a curtain, right? It's a divider. We know that that veil or that curtain, iron curtain, was removed. And America continued to expand and expand. And now she's up to Russia's border. Russia didn't want this fight, but now Russia is being forced into this fight, right? And it will continue to fester and fester and fester. Listen to me good. Unless you sock America in the mouth, she is not going to stop. I am from the bowels of the empire, and I'm telling you this. Unless you sock her where it hurts, and this is applicable to any bully, unless you make them feel the pain that they're trying to exert on you. The only language they know is violence. So you have to speak to them. And I'm not saying commit war or whatever. I'm just saying with a bully, if the language that they know and speak is violence and aggression, to communicate with that person, what do? You speak violence and aggression. If you want to communicate with a person that speaks Chinese and does not speak your language, you can't go up to them speaking Spanish, expecting them to understand you. If you go to the Englishman, the guy that speaks English, and you start speaking Russian, you can't expect that Englishman to understand you. For the bridge to be made and that gap to be bridged, either the Englishman learns the Russian or the Russian learns the English, right? So we know that America is not trying to learn what you're talking about. So guess what has to happen? You got to learn her language and speak to her in her language. Okay? This is real. I'm not making nothing up. I'm not trying. Listen, I am for peace. I am for God. And God is for you. But I got to be truthful because truth is the only thing that can liberate you. And in this new upcoming world, truth is the only thing that will be accepted. All of this propaganda, this is going out the window. Listen, this system has been tried. It has been weighed, and it's been found wanting. Exploitation, war, division, dissatisfaction, all of this stuff was tried, and everybody is now finding it disagreeable The world has reached a disagreeable level of 100% dissatisfaction. And whenever there's a longing for the people, from the people, and it has reached a level of 100% dissatisfaction, guess what happens? By nature, it produces 100% change. Therefore, regardless of what America is doing, oh yeah, Green Lord, I have to bring that up again. And I left out degeneracy. That's a part of this world too. Now, regardless to Joe Biden and the West saying, well, in this new world order or this new order or this whatever, America must lead. I can take a sense with everybody. If we have reached the level of 100% dissatisfaction, and nature and mathematics dictates whenever that happens, there must be 100% change, then how can America remain at the top? How can American leadership be accepted? Because if you leave that there, they're just going to reproduce what they're familiar with. And we're going to go through this again. Therefore, mathematics and science demands a total change. Now, you can argue with me all you want, but you can't argue with facts. You can't argue with science. You can't argue with nature. You can't argue with the basis of creation. You understand? A lot of people don't like that because it awakens them to something that they are not familiar with. And sometimes when you hold these beliefs close to you and somebody gives you a truth that shines a little condemnation on what you held before you, it's unacceptable to you. Even though that is beneficial to you, you reject it because that's not something that you're familiar with. Okay? So we see a world moving outside of the dollar's domination. We see a world moving outside of the sphere of control of America, the sphere of control of the Eastern Bloc, the Western Bloc. We see the world moving and everybody's calling out America for what she is. As a matter of fact, look at this. Just look at this.
America is showing itself to be the hypocrite of all hypocrites here. America is the country that is telling the world that it supports free trade and competition and free enterprise, and yet it is the single biggest block to free competition and free enterprise that exists on the earth. America has all of these countries under sanctions because it wants to use economics to dictate politics to other countries. It also wants to dictate culture and ethnic relations between nations which have been friends among themselves and lived and coexisted in peace for generations and centuries and even millennia until America came and set them at each other's throats. America has inherited the English curse of divide and conquer in the interests of their empire. And the world is now smartening up to this. We cannot be allowed to be forced to fight among ourselves. I was here in Serbia during the crippling sanctions that America used to try and crush Serbia. They had no effect. The people banded together. I was in Japan when America was sanctioning Japan and I was advising the Prime Minister's office. They did not cow Japan. Japan continued to produce. I have been in Canada when American interests imposed sanctions on our wood industry. America is the global bully. And as the nations of the world wake up to this fact, the bully, when it's outnumbered by all countries in the earth, will fail and fall. And this is how empires fall. This is the fall of America. They, by sanctioning the world, are sanctioning themselves.
Mic drop moment. Isn't that a mic drop moment right there? This is what I'm trying to tell you. This is a mic drop moment. Most people don't want these realities, this reality. But it's the truth nonetheless. Listen, you ignoring the truth does not stop it from being the truth. All it does is put you in danger and puts the livelihood of your family in danger for you failing to recognize something that could be beneficial to you, right? If you're in your car and you're driving down the road and you see a stop sign or a yield sign and you say, oh, I don't recognize a yield sign, I don't recognize a stop sign, that could be to your detriment. Put it there for a reason. For you to pay attention to the road and the oncoming traffic. Now, if you willfully and willingly ignore that traffic sign and get in a head-on collision where you are paralyzed or you lose some family members, who fault? It is yours for doing what? Willfully ignoring the truth that was put out there. Well, this is what's happening to America and the Western world. They are willingly and willfully ignoring the cries and the pleas of not only the masses of the global South, but their own constituencies for something new, something more just, something more fairer. And they continue to double, triple, and quadruple down on failed racist, fascist policies that only benefit a small portion of the population of the planet Earth. Because of greed, because of a desire for power. Don't you notice most of these people who are in power, most of these guys and girls who are in power, these were people who were frowned upon and disliked, or had no cliques, or had no circle of influence, no circle of friends. So when they get this power, they rule and they make policy out of that agitation and aggravation of what they went through when they were growing up. These are sociopaths. And they don't mind shedding blood because it's not their blood that's being shed. It's not their children dying. It's not their children going hungry. It's not their children being divided. It's yours. They're using you, your family. And so the losses are because they're not their losses. They can compartmentalize the losses. Yeah, America's losing troops over here, but hell, they're not my troops. I don't know them people. Yeah, I'm an American and I'm a patriot, but they're not people that I know. This is the mindset of these sociopaths. Oh yeah. It was worth 100,000, 500,000. Think about this. If Hitler is considered one of the worst people on the planet, some numbers put the deaths at 100,000. I think Richard Nixon said something like 100,000. If I'm not mistaken, it could have been a little bit more, it could have been a little bit less. Excuse me. Other people put the loss 500,000. Some people put it at 1 million. Some say 2 million. And the people from the Khazaris from Israel say 6 million Jews were lost during the Holocaust. Now, Hitler was a bad guy. Well, America has killed in the last 20 years, 30 years, has killed millions of people. She does not get judged by the same standard. Remember, in Hitler's mind, and in Hitler's government's mind, they were doing what was right. But the West didn't see it, and neither did the East. So now look at this. Over a 10, 20-year period, America has killed the likes of 6 million or more people. And she did it because in her mind, and in the UK's mind, and in NATO's mind, it was right. So what's the difference? And they talk about Hitler being, when King Leopold killed 20 million people in the Congo. He slaughtered 20 million people because he had a bad day. But Hitler, they can't even agree on the number, and Hitler the worst person. And America goes in and bombard. France goes in and bombard. Germany goes in and bombard. Italy goes in and bombard. The UK goes in and bombard. The most prosperous nation on the Mediterranean, sending it back to the Stone Age. And half of the population flee. And that's just. How is it? I'm asking. According, and what's crazy is, I'm telling you, man, the Western world is something else. Do you know, some of you are not familiar with this, do you know that prior to the NATO bombing of Libya, the UN was about to give Gaddafi and his government an award? No, some of you don't even know this. So I'm gonna fill you in on it, because I was privy to this information. They were about to give Gaddafi an award for this, because Gaddafi, before he came to power, Libya was the poorest country in the world. I think its literacy rate was 3%, if not 2%. And so from his time as leader, everything went in reverse. He eradicated poverty mostly. It was incumbent upon everybody to have an education, everybody to know the Constitution. And it went from a 2 to 3% literacy rate to a 99.9%, I think it was 99.9 or 98.9% literacy rate. Everybody got a share of the oil sales. Everybody got a share of the gas sales. If you were a person who wanted to go to school and you wanted to go to school abroad, the Libyan government would pay for it and pay for your housing and give you a stipend. If you got married, you got $50,000 in a home under so-called dictator. How many of you wouldn't want to live under a dictator like that? But he was supposed to get an award from the UN. In the United States, I'm going to tell you how wicked these people are. Man, God, dog, these people are wicked. The United States, France, the UK, and Germany went to the UN and told them they better not give him that award because they had plans to bomb Libya and overthrow Gaddafi. That's what took place. The UN was going to give it to him. And weeks before he was supposed to get the award, the United States, Germany, France, and the UK went to the UN and demanded that they cease from giving him an award and to keep it under wraps so no one would know that he was going to get something like I might be mispronounced. I think some kind of like Freedom Humanitarian Award. But that would not fit the narrative of a dictator, a tyrant, and the need for regime change. You understand? These people are wicked as hell because they have these objectives to dominate and occupy people. Man, I'm telling you what. Let me go into the chat real quick because I see something in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, Joel Bradford, he lifted up Libya. Yes. So, but that could not be accepted because, listen, I'm going to tell you, and some of you are not going to like this. That could not be accepted because he was an example for Africa. And he wanted a united Africa, United States of Africa, where the borders would not be really recognized and that all of Africa's resources would be used to bag the gold dinar. Do you know what that meant? I want you to understand something. I'm talking to everybody. White, black, brown, red, yellow, purple, polka dot, green, blue, whatever color, whatever persuasion you may be. Let me tell you the significance of that move. That would have meant overnight that Africa would become the richest place on the planet. You understand me? Because the currency would be backed by the unlimited resources of Africa. And that would have been an example for Latin America and Asia, and that was unacceptable for the United States and Europe. Unacceptable because the European currency is pegged to the dollar. The British currency is pegged to the dollar. The dollar uses the military might of the U.S. to bag the petrodollar. Without that, and up against a currency that is commodity bagged, commodity based with gold, silver, and all of the natural resources that is abundant across the continent of Africa, that would have overnight collapsed the euro, the pound, and the dollar. And that is one of the main reasons why they destroyed Libya. And another reason, I got to go back to this. They destroyed the aqueducts that Canada had built. It is no coincidence that immediately after the aqueducts were finished, the Canadian company called the Canadian government to tell them that they were done. Not within 2 weeks of that, NATO, one of their first strike missions were to destroy the aqueducts. Why? Why? For those of you who are not familiar with this, and I know my audience is familiar with this because I've said it before, but for those of you who are joining us who may not be familiar with this, they did a study, the West did a study along with Libya and other nations. They did a study and found that Libya sits on a huge pool of underground water. Huge pool, like a underground ocean almost, of fresh water. And what Gaddafi was doing, he was using some of the revenues, the oil and gas, to build aqueducts. He can funnel that water through the North Africa, so to turn the desert into back to fertile ground to produce food for the world. That's a no-no. That means that now you have an independent currency that's backed by tangible goods and commodities, and now you are financially stable and you control your own food. That is unacceptable to the US, the UK, and NATO. And that is why they hit Libya. Okay? So don't believe this stuff that they're telling you about a so-called tyrant and dictator. They did a poll prior to them bombing Libya. Muammar Gaddafi was, I think he was approved by 93% of the people of Libya. Now show me one Western leader that can get 60%. Hell, to be honest with you, look at Joe Biden. They still screaming about the election, right? Look at Macron. He doesn't even have 30-40% of the population on his side. Look at how many times the British change out their leadership. Look at what's going on in Germany. How Schultz is what, 10-12% or something like that? And you call Gaddafi a tyrant and a dictator. Man, this foolishness. Stop this. Stop it. Yeah, but listen to this. I want to play another clip. And I know the time is getting away from us, but man, I love talking to y'all, and I love discussing these issues and going in depth on it, because sometimes you share things with me that I'm not aware of, and I'm hopefully sharing things with you that you're not aware of, that you can make yourself familiar with, so that you can better prepare yourself and put up a shield against the onslaught of propaganda from the West. We benefit each other. When I'm after the truth and I'm speaking the truth, and you're after the truth, and you're diligently searching for the truth, we complement each other. All right? Especially when we're not trying to exploit the other person. Okay? That's a good partnership, right? So unlike when Russia calls the West their partners and I call you my partner, I'm sincere. Russia's sincere, but the West is not sincere. And hopefully you are sincere with me. Okay? So look. Again, we'll see. I want to, before I play this clip, I want to go to something real quick, because as soon as I clicked on this, I thought about it. We look at the Armenian situation. Okay. I wanted to talk to you about India, because it's something very important about India to discuss, and I may have to get on it on another show, but Armenia. Here's another way showing Russia that America will not yield. See, Russia thinks that by just saying that we obey international law, we do this, that will stop America. I'm in the bowels of the beast. I'm telling you, the only language that the beast understands is if she gets a taste of what she's dishing out. Now, say for instance, if I was the leader of a nation, okay, and I had this nation destabilizing a nation on my border, guess what I would do? I destabilize. I don't care. None of the threats, none of that. None of that. You can threaten me all day long. But what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You know, well, it would be unacceptable for Russia to have military bases on Mexico. Stop me then. Well, didn't you just say that Ukraine should be able to decide its own future? It's an independent and sovereign nation. Then Mexico should be able to decide their own future. It's independent and sovereign. You want to come on my border? I'm going to come on yours. You want to sail ships in the Black Sea and in the Bering Strait? I'm going to be in the Gulf of Mexico. You understand me? This is the language. You don't have to be violent. But what you have to do is show them. You want to fly your warplanes close to my borders? Guess what? I'm going to fly twice as many close to yours. And Russia, listen, Russia has an ace up its sleeve, and it won't even use it. I'm going to tell you the ace up its sleeve, which to me confounds me sometimes. The United States has gobbled up all of the former Soviet bloc nations, right? From Lithuania to Estonia to Poland to what else? Trying to gobble up Armenia, and they try to gobble up Georgia, and they're trying to gobble up Ukraine. Okay. Now, in the 60s, the world almost went to nuclear war because Russia had a military base in Cuba, and Russia had deployed nuclear-capable missiles in Cuba. All right. The United States give you the story that they embargoed Cuba and that forced the Russians to capitulate and to pull their missiles out, when in reality, that's not what took place. And in reality, the U.S. was forced to take its missiles out of Turkey. I think it's Persian missiles. They were forced to take those were nuclear-capable cruise missiles in Turkey. And Russia agreed that if you take those out, we would take those out of Cuba. Now, I'm telling you this to give you an understanding of what's going on. Now, Russia was weak, but at no point was Russia so weak that it did not have a nuclear deterrent. You understand what I'm saying? All right. At no point was Russia weak where it did not have a nuclear deterrent. So I would have warned the West, no more. We're not going through this. We don't have the military wherewithal to beat you conventionally. But if you gobble up any more, this would force us to use what military we have. And if you respond, we will respond in a way that the world would not like. This is the only way to force their hands. Now check it. Maybe it could have stalled or prevented, or maybe it did. It couldn't have. But check this out. She still has an ace up her sleeve. America is trying to gobble up Georgia again, trying to gobble up Ukraine, trying to gobble up Moldova. That's the nation that I was forgetting. Trying to gobble up Moldova in the Black Sea, so she can turn the Black Sea into a NATO lake. Well, all Russia has to do is say, okay, I agree with you, United States. So you say every nation has the right to determine who they're going to have on their borders and who they're going to have in their country and blah, 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 and this and that. Okay. While I'm talking to you, I want you to have that same energy, because I just deployed nuclear-armed submarines to Cuba, nuclear-armed bombers to Cuba, and nuclear-armed MiG-30s to Cuba, 31s, I think MiG-31s. I think those are the interceptors to Cuba, with a multitude of S-400s, bulk, and Panzer systems. Now, this would force the hand. Now, before the whole world, it would force America to either acknowledge that Cuba and Russia has that right, or they would have to capitulate and say, you know what, we don't want that here, so we're going to have to consider what Russia is saying on its borders. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I would not just bring that card to play in Cuba. I would also bring it to bear in Venezuela. Venezuela is a willing nation. I believe Nicaragua asked for Chinese or Russian military aid. Since you want to build up in my area, I'll build up in yours. How about that? You want color revolutions? Okay, well, we'll put this stuff over here and we'll see just how many color revolutions you can instigate while we're on the soil of these sovereign territories. Because if Russia does not act and they only stand back and react, they'll lose this war against the empire. The empire knows no holding back, buddy. The only time they negotiate, the only time they offer a pause, the only time they offer peace talks is when they are hemorrhaging from losses, or they must regroup, or they need to buy some time. That's it. That's it, like my friend said. That's it, that's all. And you cannot trust her when she offers you a signed agreement. Ask the Native Americans. Ask the Native Americans who speak Spanish in Latin America. Ask former slaves. Ask any nation that America has signed a treaty to, which she honored her treaty. Y'all are going to see, watch what I tell you. You're going to see this when Russia starts gobbling back up those nations that used to be the former Soviet Union. You're going to see the first few, America's not going to, she's not going to be able to respond. Watch what I tell you guys. When a person's existence is at stake, like Russia's, and when a person's existence is at stake, like Iran's, and like those African nations like Mali and Chad and Burkina Faso and Niger, when these nations are at stake, listen, when there's a possibility that you can lose it all, you put everything on the line to preserve it all. Everything on the line to preserve it all. If you love your family and you see it going down the drain, you will sacrifice everything to preserve that family. It's like the chicken and the rooster, right? And I should know this, because we got plenty of them over that way. So listen, the hawks start flying. The rooster sends the chicken or the hen into the pen, but the rooster stays out, even though the rooster knows that there's no match for the hawk. The rooster is willing to put it all on the line to save the family legacy, its livelihood. That's what we're watching today when we're seeing Africa stand up, when we see Latin America stand up, when we see Eurasia stand up, when we see major Asia stand up, when we see Eastern European nations say enough is enough. What we're looking at is the rooster standing up to the hawk and saying, I'm willing to put it all on the line to preserve my culture, to preserve my nation, to preserve my heritage. I'm willing to do that, even at the cost of my own life, because even in death, I'll live through that. So the rooster is saying, I no longer fear death. What's the worst that could happen to me? Put me in the ground? But if I preserve my legacy and my heritage, I'll live forever. That's what they're saying. They're fed up with the empire. They're fed up with them. They want something more. And they're telling you that it's time for a change. And that change, as Sam Cooke says, has come. That change is going to come. And the change is coming. It's underway as we speak. Thank you all for listening to another edition of the most powerful platform for truth anywhere, bar none, on YouTube or social media. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your brother and your host, Rashid. I love you with an undying love, but always remember that the love that the true and living God has for you will always make what I have for you pale in comparison. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Thank you, everybody. Deuces. I'm out of here. Peace.